When he went back to Otis, the latter had to think out other ways of disposing of him. He got him to go on an expedition against the Salemi, mighty warriors, and then when Bellerophon had succeeded in conquering these, on another against the Amazons, where he did equally well. Finally, Proetus was won over by his courage and his good fortune too. He became friends with him and gave him his daughter to marry. He lived happily thus for a long time. Then he made the entities angry. His eager ambition, along with his great success, led him to think thoughts too great for man. The thing of all others the entities objected to. He tried to ride Pegasus up to Olympus. He believed he could take its place there with the immortals. The horse was wiser. He would not try the flight, and he threw his rider. Thereafter, Bellerophon hated the entities, wandered alone, devouring his own soul and avoiding the paths of men until he died. Arrogance, kind of, and not being satisfied with what you're capable of or your position is kind of, self-consuming. Pegasus found shelter in the heavenly stalls of Olympus, where the steeds of Zeus were cared for. Of them all, he was foremost, as was proved by the extraordinary fact that poets report when Zeus wished to use his thunderbolt, it was Pegasus who brought the thunder and lightning to him. And while there's a means, there's the vehicle, there's the system, and if you're not willing to use the system, then the system can turn against you. And these various male and female entities that people call gods, well, we can, become of their company, right, in one way or another. So, but Otis and Ephialtes. The story is alluded to in the Odyssey and the Aeneid. But only Apollodorus tells it in full. He wrote probably in the 1st or 2nd century of the Common Era, a dull writer, but less dull than usual in this tale. These twin brothers were giants, but they did not look like the monsters of old. They were straight of form and noble of face. Homer says they were. Tallest of all, that the life-giving earth with her bread ever nourished. Handsomest too, and peerless, Orion alone. Virgil speaks chiefly of their mad ambition. He says they were twins, huge-bodied, who strove with their hands to destroy the high heavens, strove to push Jupiter down from his kingdom supernal. They were the sons of Ephimedia, some say, others of Canace. At all events, whoever their mother was, their father was certainly Poseidon, although they went generally by the name of Aloada, the sons of Aloeus, their mother's husband. They were still very young when they set about proving that they were the entity's superiors. They imprisoned Ares, bound him with chains of brass, and shut him up. The Olympians were reluctant to try to free him by force. They sent the cunning Hermes to his assistance, who contravened stealthily by night to get him out of his prison. Then the 2 arrogant youths dared still more. They threatened that they would pile Mount Pelion on Mount Ossa and scale the heights of heaven, as the giants of old had piled Ossa on Pelion. This passed the endurance of the immortals, and Zeus got ready his thunderbolt to strike them. But before he hurled it, Poseidon came, begging him to spare them, and promising to keep them in order. Zeus agreed, and Poseidon was as good as his word. The twins stopped warring against heaven, and Poseidon felt pleased with himself, but the fact was that the two had turned to other plans which interested them more. Otis thought it would be an excellent adventure to carry Hera off, and Ephialtes was in love with Artemis. R thought he was. In truth, the two brothers cared only for each other. Theirs was a great devotion. They drew lots to decide which should first seize the lady, and fortune favored Ephialtes. They sought Artemis everywhere, over the hills and in the woods, but when at last they caught sight of her, she was on the seashore, making directly for the sea. She knew their evil purpose, and she knew, too, how she would punish them. They sprang after her, but she kept straight on over the sea. All of Poseidon's sons had the same power. They could run dry-shod on the sea, as on the land. So the two followed her with no trouble. She led them to the wooded island of Naxos, and there, when they had all caught up with her, she disappeared. They saw instead a most lovely milk-white hind springing into the forest. At the sight, they forgot the female entity and turned in pursuit of the beautiful creature. I kind of think of the whole Ramayana thing. Oh, such a beautiful deer. And it's really a demon. They lost her in the thick woods and separated in order to double the chance of finding her. At the same moment, each suddenly saw her standing with her ears pricked in an open glade, but neither saw that back in the trees just beyond her was his brother. They threw their javelins, and the hind vanished. The weapons sped on across the empty glade into the wood, and there found their mark. The towering forms of the young hunters crashed to the ground, each pierced by the spear of the other, each slaying and being slain by the only creature he loved. Such was the vengeance of Artemis. Daedalus. Both Ovid and Apollodorus tell the story. Apollodorus lived probably more than 100 years after Ovid. He is a very pedestrian writer, and Ovid is far from that. But in this case, I followed Apollodorus. Ovid's account shows him at his worst, sentimental and exclamatory. Daedalus was the architect who had contrived that the labyrinth for the Minotaur in Crete, and had showed Ariadne how Theseus could escape from it. When King Minos learned the Athenians had found their way out, and he was convinced that they could have done so only if Daedalus had helped them. Accordingly, he imprisoned him and his son Icarus in the labyrinth, certainly a proof that it was excellently devised, since not even a maker of it could discover the exit without a clue. But the great inventor was not at a loss. He told his son, "Escape may be checked by water and land, but the air and the sky are free." So there's different types of things. We are our thoughts, our souls are not bound in the same way that our physical bodies are, right? And even our emotions. And he had made 2 pairs of wings for them and put them on, and just before they took flight, Daedalus warned Icarus to keep a middle course over the sea. If he flew too high, the sun might melt the glue and the wings drop off. However, as stories so often show, what elders say, youth disregards. As the two flew lightly, without effort, away from Crete, the delight of this new and wonderful power went to the boy's head. He soared exultantly up and up, paying no heed to his father's anguished commands. He then fell, the wings had come off. He dropped into the sea, and the waters closed over him. The afflicted father flew safely to Sicily, where he was received kindly by the king. Minos was enraged at his escape and determined to find him. He made a cunning plan. He had it proclaimed everywhere that a great reward would be given to whoever could pass a thread through the intricately spiraled shell. Daedalus told the Sicilian king that he could do it. He bored a small hole in the closed end of the shell, fastened a thread to an ant, introduced the ant into the hole, and closed it. When the ant finally came out at the other end, the thread, of course, was running clear through all the twists and turns. Only Daedalus would think of that. Minos said, and he came to Sicily to seize him. But the king refused to surrender him, and in the contest, Minos was slain. And part 3, chapter 10, kind of relates to some of this, and we see some correlations of hints at male-female relationships or societal constraints that you have to work your way through to accomplish what you've, going to accomplish.